The United States and Europe have reached a trade deal. This is a trade deal that just happened today, reached by Donald Trump and Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. This was in Turnberry, Scotland. And the details of the deal are the United States will have 15% tariffs on goods exported from the European Union to the United States. Now, goods exported to the European Union from the United States will have 0% tariffs. But Europe has lots of trade barriers already in place. And this has been part of the problem for the United States. So the European Union has agreed to lower some of those non tariff barriers, particularly on US cars and car parts, as well as agricultural products. Now, we'll have to see to what extent they lower these tariff barriers, but it's better than what we had before. Now, in addition to that, the European Union has agreed to buy $750 billion worth of energy from the United States. I assume that's going to be mostly liquefied natural gas. It's probably something they would have been doing anyway, but it's good to have. The other thing the European Union has agreed to do is invest $600 billion in the United States. And that would be in factories and production and that sort of thing. Now, the United States also, if it's not satisfied with the investments from the European Union, such as they're not meeting their investment requirements into the United States, or the non tariff barriers are not coming down, the United States reserves the right to raise those tariffs above the 15% level. Now, the European Union is probably pretty happy that they have a 15% tariff from the United States rather than a 30% tariff from the United States. In fact, Ursula von der Leyen mentioned to the press that 15% was the best that they could get. Also, from von der Leyen, I should say, um, tariffs on cars, according to her, would be 15% as well. The all inclusive is the term that she mentioned. Now, when it comes to the metals like the steel, aluminum, copper, those are still going to be 50% tariffs. I should also mention that von der Leyen mentioned some zero for zero tariffs, and I believe these are going to be applied to aerospace, possibly pharmaceuticals and chemicals. I'm not sure. But aerospace really seemed to be the thing, and that would make sense because Europe, of course, has Airbus, the United States has Boeing. Both these companies sell planes back and forth to different airlines between the continents, between the United States and between Europe. So that would kind of make sense, and I believe their cost structures are about the same, Boeing's and Airbus. So that sounds fair enough. Overall, Europe is the United States' largest trading partner. Now, that is because it's a block of 27 countries. So I should say the European Union is the United States' largest trading partner. And that's about $975 billion a year in total trade as of 2024. I believe there was 600 billion, 605 billion in EU exports to the United States, while the US only exported about $370 billion to the EU. And that's kind of the crux of the balance of trade argument that Trump has had against the EU and against all these other countries, really, is balancing the trade between the United States and the EU. And if you see on this chart here, the EU is the largest trading partner of the United States. It's larger than Mexico, larger than Canada, larger than China. China is only our fourth largest trading partner when it's laid out this way. And then, of course, Japan, which we just struck a deal with, another framework deal. This deal with the European Union is basically a framework deal. There are a lot of details that need to be hammered out. But you can see the trade between the United States and the European Union dwarfs the trade that we have with Japan, and Japan is the fifth largest trading partner. Then below that, we have South Korea, slightly below Japan, Taiwan, and Vietnam. which surprisingly, to a lot of people before the tariffs began, it was surprising to find out just how large a trade partner Vietnam is with the United States. Vietnam exports a lot of electronics to the United States. Before that, most people thought that Vietnam was only exporting things like furniture and textiles, but they're a major electronics exporter to the United States. So, what's the takeaway with this agreement? Well, first of all, it's a framework agreement, so all the details aren't hammered out. The main points and the broad strokes are there in place. This is the largest trade agreement that the United States is going to have. And the previous agreement, the kind of the historical agreements before all the tariffs began, were a 1.47 tariff on EU goods to the United States, and the EU had a 1.35% tariff on US goods. That wasn't the issue, though. The main issue was that most US goods in many categories, agriculture, automobiles especially, were essentially blocked by non tariff barriers to the EU. So hopefully, this knocks down some of those barriers. And I think for the United States, really the big takeaway is we have a 15% tariff on goods produced in the EU. And I think what this is really a long term strategy for the United States to gain the production that was being done previously in the European Union. Essentially, European companies just packing up their factories in Europe and moving them to the United States to produce the goods for the United States, thereby allowing American workers to produce the value added parts of the products that they're consuming anyway. And the higher value add products are going to bring higher wages to the United States. So I really think the main goal is to have that 15% tariff to coerce European manufacturers to move more of their production to the United States, move more of the car production to the United States, move more of the machinery production to the United States. And that's what the United States really wants. Not only that, the European Union is in a really bad place when it comes to energy now, especially with gas, liquefied natural gas. They no longer have access to pipeline gas. That really makes it uneconomical to produce a lot of the chemicals that were being produced in the European Union. Those things will no longer be produced there because they're unaffordable there. They're unaffordable to produce there. They're uneconomical to produce there, I should say. So I think over the long term, that 15% tariff is really what Trump wanted. It's to move the high end manufacturing over to the United States because that's what we really want. We want higher levels of productivity, more value add, therefore higher wages, better paid jobs, etc. And that would give Americans a higher standard of living. Now, Europe is in a really bad position, and I think they took this deal of 15% because it was better than what they were up against before, which is a 30% tariff. And they actually had no room to negotiate since they already export more to the United States. There's not much they can do to the United States. Now, they have opened up their markets as far as, or they will be opening up their markets, so they say, as far as automobiles and agricultural products. But those aren't really things that we could count on from the United States to be imported into Europe. Europeans don't really seem to be that keen on American cars or American agriculture for the most part. I mean, maybe some vegetables and things like that, produce, uh, but not necessarily meat and things like that. We'll have to see. I'm sure American agricultural products, they're definitely cheaper, so they may have a market in Europe. But I don't think that is the main takeaway. I really think it's the structural implementation of this 15% tariff to get the relocation of European industry to the United States, at least the European industry that is producing for the United States, to balance the overall trade between the countries. Anyway, that's my takeaway on it. If you disagree with me, leave it below in the comments. Tell me what you think I'm getting wrong on this. And if you like this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.